Trinity, help! Pooh, pooh, pooh. I'm stuck in bullet time and ready to talk about the Matrix. Let's talk about the Matrix Resurrection. I know Kung Fu and how the Matrix Resurrections is. Let's talk about it now. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch Our Past. I'm here to talk to you about the Matrix Resurrections, which is the fourth movie in the Matrix trilogy. You remember the Matrix movies? I'm sure you've seen them. They're kind of embedded in pop culture now. So the first one came out in 1999, and then Matrix Reloaded came out in I think 2003, and then Revolutions also came out in 2003. So it was a pretty Matrix-filled world, and then we had nothing. There have been games, there's been the Animatrix, there's been a few other properties, but nothing really substantial from this universe until now. Now we have the Matrix Resurrections is coming to theaters and HBO Max on December 22nd, 2021. It is directed by Lana Wachowski and it stars some of the original characters. But it is a unique new Matrix story that has a lot of callbacks. My hot take is, I liked it. It's a different movie than the other ones, but I think it kind of had to be. It couldn't just be a rehash of what the original movies had because they were special, they were amazing. But you want something different. You don't want to see the same thing in a new fresh coat of paint. Maybe you do. Maybe that would have been great to see like a Matrix remastered. But this is a new story with plenty of callbacks to the original films. It's got lots of references, some characters return, and it has the same action and CG that the franchise is known for. But it also has some of the franchise's strange exposition, and the CG is a double-edged sword because there are some scenes that are pure CG. But overall, I liked it. I think if you're a Matrix fan, you're gonna love it. If you remember the old films fondly, you're gonna have a good time. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and go into the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers. If you don't know anything about the film, you don't want to know anything about the film, turn this off now. Go check it out when it comes to theaters or on HBO Max in like 2 days, tomorrow, I think, essentially, and then come back and watch this. But if you want to hear my thoughts, you want to hear more about the film, you want to hear things that happen, then let's keep going. So in The Matrix Resurrections, Thomas Anderson, Keanu Reeves' character, is a brilliant game designer who designed this game called The Matrix. It's a 3-part game that had a lot of concepts that you'll think of, but the film is kind of set in a slightly futuristic time from the original movies. It's set, kind of in modern times. And Thomas Anderson is a game designer. He is fighting with these convictions about his game that he designed. Sometimes he thought they were real. He kind of fights the urges to reenact things that happened in the Matrix. And I think it's a pretty clever setup, and it kind of introduces you to this world and some of the characters that we know and love, but they now have a new skin. So Jonathan Groff plays Smith, but he is also in this movie. At the start of the movie, he's Neo's boss. He's like the founder of this company, and Neo is the brilliant game designer. And they're kind of at odds. But then you also have Neil Patrick Harris, who plays the Analyst, who's kind of like the architect. He's kind of the creator of the Matrix. But he also plays Thomas Anderson's psychotherapist, who tries to talk him out of these crazy ideas he has of him jumping off of buildings and flying and all of that. And I think it's a pretty clever introduction because it kind of puts everything on its head, because you have this shared history of the Matrix, but everyone thinks it's a game or a simulation or something that didn't happen in reality. And Thomas Anderson, Neo, doesn't actually think it happened in reality. He kind of goes back and forth. He thinks it's in his head. He thinks that it's part of the game. But then, as you can imagine, as he delves more into this and people from the Matrix pop up to try to convince him, he eventually understands what happened. And I thought that was clever too, because this explains how Neo could be in the Matrix, but also hidden, because he doesn't really know he's Neo. He's Thomas Anderson in this, and he doesn't believe that he is the one. He is just this brilliant game designer in this new Matrix simulation. So I thought it was a pretty clever introduction. But as you can imagine, everyone's looking for Neo because he's the one. And so eventually when they find him, that causes some things to happen in this world. So things I liked about this movie. The first are the callbacks. I thought that the callbacks were very clever. You had clips from the original Matrix films, a lot of clips from the Matrix films that kind of play either in Neo's head when he's kind of remembering things that happened in his game, or they pop up here and there during some scenes to kind of call back to those original iconic scenes. And you also have lines from the Matrix. You've got some sequences from the Matrix. It's a pretty nice sprinkling of references that fans will like. You've got some characters that make appearances, And you even have the very start of the movie starts off like the Matrix because it's a simulation, and so they're simulating what happened. So it feels just like an updated opening to the Matrix. So you'll instantly kind of get that nostalgic smile because it starts off nostalgically. The second thing I really liked is the action. It's a Matrix movie, so you're going to have amazing fight scenes and kind of a special effects bonanza. And this film does not disappoint. You've got some pretty crazy scenes, you've got some really elaborate fights, and you have some really over the top explosions and excitement. And so if you see this in theaters, you will not be disappointed because you've got big screen filling effects and big kind of theater filling sound. So that is one reason to maybe see it in theaters. But obviously be cautious. If you see it at home, you'll still have a great experience. And it's coming to the home theater day and date. But make sure you have a good sound setup, make sure you have a good screen because this has some really great special effects. The third thing I really liked is the original cast. You have Keanu and Carrie-Anne Moss, who come back to reprise their roles, although they play pedestrian roles at the start, and then eventually they realize who they actually are. But I love seeing them back again. I love seeing kind of Keanu Reeves as Thomas Anderson trying to kind of fight against his urges to be the one. And then Carrie-Anne Moss reprises her role as well. But in this movie, she is, I think Trish is her name, and she doesn't really know that she's Trinity until later. And it's not just those two. You do get some other characters from the original films and some rehashes. You get, I guess, an update, if you want to call it that. They bring some of the characters back as new models, I assume because they couldn't get the original actors or they just wanted to keep it different. But in any event, it's a good use of the original properties and some of the original actors. And the last thing I really liked is this did feel like a fresh take on the story. Like, you're always worried when a film kind of comes back after such a long amount of time that they might just try to redo what the old films did. But this film kept it fresh. I really liked the idea that Neo is this game designer who designed the Matrix games, and that's why he has all these visions and ideas. I thought that was a clever way to start and let you kind of start it in the real world with crazy things happening. Also, almost kind of throwing back to the original Matrix. It actually felt very much like Assassin's Creed Black Flag if you played that game, where you have a video game simulation and then you have aspects where you're outside the simulation, and that's how this felt as well. And I really liked it. I thought it was very clever. I really did like this because it did feel like a fresh take on the original properties that honored the original properties but kind of updated them and changed them for this current model. Things I didn't really love. I mean, some of the CG, it's a Matrix movie, so you're going to have a lot of CG. And as with the original movies, there's some CG that's a little over the top, some CG that feels that doesn't feel fluid enough. And it's better now that kind of technology is caught up, but you still have some scenes where it's clear that it is completely computer generated, doesn't look that natural. And that's okay because that's kind of what this is. But just, be warned. And also some of the, I guess, machines in this film did feel like a little too out there. They felt a little, they looked a little silly. They didn't look like they were machines proper. There was one, some of the AIs can project into the real world using, magnetic beads that give them this kind of outline that looked a little silly. I mean, it was a clever idea, but it looked a little ridiculous. And also some of the machines looked a little too organic to be machines, but maybe that's how technology is going to evolve. The second thing I didn't love is in this movie, it's tough to kind of figure out where the people and the bots end. And I think that's part of the idea. Like, this movie tries to blur those lines by having some characters be AIs that are important characters. But it did also make it a little confusing when I wasn't really sure who was jacked in, who was like a captive in the Matrix, and who was like a program being run to fill out the Matrix. And this also became really unclear when they call it the swarm, but that's what they said, enemies at the free folk, the free people. They essentially almost do what the agents, how Smith and the agents would take over, except their eyes just kind of turn into code, and then they, become mindless warriors for the Matrix. But unlike in the first movie, where if someone died in that kind of captive state, they would go back to being like the person that they were. And in this movie, sometimes they would just kind of like disappear into code, or like their cuts would have like code things in them, and it looked a little silly. And also it made it so I wasn't sure like if these were just programs that were sacrificing themselves, if they were people that were taken over by programs. It's a little unclear. I think it's supposed to be kind of gray in that respect, but it did make it kind of, I was unsure how much of this Matrix was organically fueled and how much of it was just computer simulation. And the last thing I didn't really love is the ending, and I thought the ending was okay. It was enjoyable, but it was a little unclear why they were fighting against the machines, and also it was a little unclear if there were going to be more. Now, I imagine there will probably be more. Warner Brothers probably likes dump trucks full of money, and there's some funny references in the movie about Warner Brothers like forcing them to make sequels. So I think there probably will be sequels, but it's a little unclear at the end where the next step is going to be. So in the end, you have Neo eventually getting freed. He gets contacted by this new captain named Bugs and her crew, and they eventually break him out of the Matrix. They free him. He's in this like special room that just has two pods. One is Neo, and the other is someone else. Who is it? Well, I think you can probably guess. And as Neo is being freed, he kind of looks down and sees Trinity. So Trinity is the other person in this pod, but he just was freed. They only could free one person, and so they only freed Neo. And as you can imagine, Neo wants to get Trinity back. So they instantly start to kind of hatch a plan to try to get Trinity back, and they do this with the help of a returning character. They have Sati in this, although she's a grown-up Sati. I mean, it's been years. She's played by Priyanka Chopra Jones, and I thought that was a clever callback. I liked having her come back and help out here. She is a program, but she's helping out the free people because her father would have wanted her to help Neo, and her father is one of the people that designed the pods that kind of brought Neo and Trinity back to life. As you remember, Trinity died, and I think Neo also died at the end of the Matrix. And so they used these pods that brought them back to life, and then they were using their energy, their charisma, their tension to help fuel the overall Matrix. The explanation was a little weird, but it said that they can't be together, because when they're together, bad things happen. But if they are in the same world but just not together, then that helps to fuel the overall Matrix and makes everyone a lot happier in this simulation. So the machines brought them back to life, but then kind of kept them in this new simulation, this updated simulation, and had them briefly have contact with each other, but they couldn't ever be together, and they couldn't be their old selves. So they hatch a plan to get Trinity back, and it's a similar plan to how they got Neo back. They kind of sneak into that chamber again and try to free Trinity. But while they're sneaking into this pod, they kind of have to do it twofold, because they then also send Neo and a bunch of the captains to meet the Analyst, who's played by Neil Patrick Harris, and try to convince Trinity to leave the Matrix. And so they kind of come up with this deal that they can't force her to leave. You can't force someone to end their simulation and kind of wake up in the real world. So the captains all go to this meeting place with the Analyst, who is kind of the architect, but now he's the Analyst, and a ton of police officers and SWAT people and guards. And they bring Trinity as well and give her that choice. But as they're giving her that choice, her family comes and tries to convince her to leave. They're like, "Oh no, something happened. We have to go." And so they're pulling her back, and it seems like Trinity has made her choice. Like she is going to stay as Trish. I think it was Trish. I think that's what her name was, and not go with Neo. But that also then means, because of this deal, that Neo is going to have to jack himself back into the Matrix as well. So all hope seems lost until the very end, when Trinity decides she wants to be Trinity. And so she pulls her hand away from her husband and tries to go to Neo. And that's when the Analyst double crosses them. So the Analyst tries to kill Trinity. But thankfully, we've got our friends over at the pod trying to free her. And they kind of do this innovative swap thing where Bugs is there, and they kind of jack Bugs in and share Trinity's port. And so Bugs kind of takes over as Trinity, so that they can then unjack Trinity and hook her up to like some sort of, I don't know, like a Wi-Fi signal. It's something that allows her to stay jacked in but not be in the pod. And so they kind of do this swaparoo, allowing Trinity to be extracted from the pod and taken away, and then Bugs is able to also escape. But they do this so that Trinity can seamlessly swap without jacking out of the Matrix and potentially dying. So they do this, and unfortunately, the Analyst then tries to kill Trinity. And it looks like he's going to succeed, because he kind of has full control of the Matrix. Neo doesn't have his full Matrix powers yet. And Trinity obviously doesn't know exactly what she can do. So he slows down time and is about to kill Trinity when Agent Smith shows up. And this is a new Agent Smith. It's still Agent Smith, but he's played by Jonathan Groff. So now he's younger, he's blue-eyed, he's like, I don't know, the Ken doll Agent Smith. And Agent Smith tries to stop the architect. He kind of backstabs the architect, stops him, and allows Neo and Trinity to then break the hold and fight their way out. So now that the architect is kind of disoriented, Neo and Trinity try to get to each other, and when they finally touch hands, there's this like big explosion that knocks everyone out, knocks everyone down, and Trinity and Neo try to escape. But as everyone's trying to escape, the swarm happens, and this means just every, I guess, program in the area. I think they're programs because when they die, they kind of turn into like code. But every program in the area tries to swarm and take out Neo, Trinity, and the other captains. But hey, it's Neo and Trinity. Jump on a motorcycle, scoot their way out. But it's the Matrix. They get attacked by helicopters. And the helicopters have rocket launchers that apparently Neo can't stop, which I thought was weird because he can stop bullets. I mean, I guess a rocket has more mass, but it's a similar principle. So apparently he can't stop rockets. And so they shoot rockets at them as they're trying to escape, and that blows up their bike. But they thankfully are at this building, so they go up to the top of the building. But there's still helicopters there, and those helicopters shoot with their chain guns at Neo, but he uses his powers to stop them. Although his bullet stopping power is not the same, it's not as effortless. I think it's probably because he's still kind of rediscovering his powers, but it's more of like a shield. Like they can shoot him, but the bullets don't just stop, they kind of like bounce off. So it feels more kinetic. It feels like he's more at odds. I imagine if there are future movies, he will probably get his powers back. But in this one, he stops them, but it feels like it takes a lot more effort. But also, one of the new powers he has kind of like a Kamehameha type ability. He can shoot out like force fields that push people back, which was kind of a cool effect. It was a nice new power for him to have. So he stops all these helicopter chain gun bullets, and the other helicopter eventually shoots a missile at him. And this time he's able to kind of like redirect it. He can't stop it, but he redirects it into the other helicopter, which causes an explosion, which then almost kills Neo and Trinity. But they survive because, hey, it's Neo and Trinity. But when they get up, the swarm is there. They're being pursued. And rather than go back into the Matrix, they decide to jump off the building and try to see if they can escape that way. And so they do, and then they start falling, and Neo has already said that he can't fly. Like he doesn't have that power anymore. And so they're falling, and they stop. And why they stop? Who's holding them up? Well, now Trinity is the one who is holding them up, who's flying, who's kind of using her powers. I guess maybe she's the one in this simulation. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but she is holding Neo up. She is flying, and she eventually flies away, saving Neo. So that's kind of the end of the action scenes. Afterwards, Trinity and Neo confront the architect, and they break into his house, or they kind of blow off the side of his house and go. And when they're in there, the architect says, you can try to free the people, but they like this world. They like the routine. They like not being surprised. They like the regularity of this world. But Trinity and Neo essentially aren't there to ask for his permission. They're there to tell them they're going to remake this world. It's now their world. They're in control, and for him to essentially watch out. And then they fly away. And in this scene, now they both can fly. They kind of like they kind of circle around each other as they're flying. Neo apparently has his flying powers back, and they fly away. And that's the end of the Matrix Resurrections. There is a stinger scene. It's pretty funny. It's like a marketing callback to an earlier scene when they were in the games company trying to brainstorm ideas for the Matrix game. So there's a really clever scene at the very end. It's at the very, very end of the credits. You gotta stay through the entire one to see it. But I thought it was worth it. And that's the Matrix Resurrections. Look, I thought it was fun. I thought it was clever. There were some issues, like you don't really know why they're trying to free everyone. Everyone seems to be pretty happy, and it seems like the machines and the people are kind of at a truce. So it's unclear why they need to free everyone and take down the Matrix. But I guess you know what, the Matrix is bad. It's kind of not giving people choice. But it seems like everyone was in a pretty kind of healthy alliance, and then they freed Neo, and everything went crazy. And I'm sure there will be more Matrix movies, and I'm sure they'll expand on why they have to free everyone in those movies. But that's the Matrix Resurrections. I think it's pretty good. I think you should definitely see it. I had some mixed feelings, but overall I did like it, and I thought it was a clever way to reboot the series. It's coming to theaters and HBO Max on December 22nd, 2021, so you can check it out either in theaters or from the comfort of your own home. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. And check out my other content. I've got other movie reviews, unboxing videos, interviews, and weekly movie recommendations. Thank you.